for coming to this new session of ADS Office Hours. Today, let me just do a quick translation, change of screens. So today we are going to speak about full text in the new ADS. And first, to speak about full text in the new ADS, we should remember that the classic version of ADS, actually in the classic version, we can only search for metadata, we can only search for things that appear in abstract, but we cannot search for things that actually appear in the content of the articles. So this is actually a new feature of the new ADS, something that we cannot do in the classic ADS. And what do we mean when we say now we have full text in the new ADS? So basically what we mean is the full text is, of course, the title, the authors, the abstract, but also the body of our articles, the appendices that may appear in the article, and even acknowledgement that are also included in the article. So basically it's like the full content that usually you can access to any article via the PDF. So, of course, ADS is mainly focused on astronomy, which means that we are indexing full text for major journals such as AJ, Monthly Notices, and Astronomy and Astrophysics. These are the main, as you all know, these are the main journals for the community, for the astronomical community. And actually related to this, there is a very nice study that was published very recently by Mike and Edwin that you can access here. And it's a comparative study of all these journals, including many more, not only these three, and how they evolved through the years. So I really invite you to check this out because it's really interesting. So before coming to ADS as an astronomer, of course I was aware of the existence of these journals because I was reading all the time articles from them, but I was actually not that aware that behind these journals there are publishers, that they have their own different names. Like in this case, each of these journals is published by a different publisher, which also each of these publishers may publish many other journals. This is something I didn't know before. And of course, it's not only a matter of these three main journals and these three publishers, but there are plenty of other publishers that I didn't know about, and now I know them, of course, because I work here in ADS. So if we actually check what is the distribution of how many papers, how many full text we receive from each of these publishers, this is what we can see. So here we have the list of publishers, and actually the list, as we will see later on, still continues. This is just a fragment, and here we have the number of articles. So we see that the major contributor is Archive. We see also that in the third place it's ADS, which I will explain later on why do we appear in this list. But it's quite remarkable, the number of articles that we have, and if we continue the list by following from Springer, the list still goes on and on. So, as you've seen in this plot, the main contributor is Archive. As you all know, Archive is the place where astronomers or other people from other fields too publish preprints. So before the article is being accepted by the publisher, the researcher can publish the article in Archive. But something that I want to mention here is that we are not only receiving full text from the AstroPH section in Archive, but we are also including everything that comes from physics in general and other fields such as mathematics, computer science, and on and on. So this means that in the end, even if ADS is mainly useful for the astronomical community, also people from outside, from other domains, may find useful what ADS offers. Then, as you've seen before in the distribution of publishers, ADS also appeared in that list. And that's because ADS has scanned many articles from the past, for which we only have physical copies, or even we only have images, digital images that we have to OCR, so process them to extract the text from them. But I also want to take advantage of this moment to mention that ADS participates in the further project, which it's an effort from the library to do a transcription of more than 2,000 logbooks from early Harvard astronomers. We have all these records already now in ADS, and for 40 of them we already have the full text. This is an effort that takes some time because all these notebooks, handwritten notebooks, need to be translated and converted to text to be able to be indexed by ADS. But it's really an amazing effort, and actually it perfectly links with this plot here, where what we are showing here is like the number of articles for which we have full text during the time, and the interesting thing here is like how far away we are reaching. And actually, if we check like what's the earliest, the oldest article for which we have full text, it dates from 1542, and it actually corresponds to Copernicus. So it's quite amazing that in ADS we can check all these historical data and not only current articles. But as you can see, for the latest 70 years or so, the growth it's really exponential. If we focus on that period and we check the different main contributors to the full text that ADS has, we see that the most outstanding of all of them is its archive, which is growing at a rhythm that is really impressive, and which also, of course, supposes a challenge for ADS to process all this information. All these publishers provide us this full text that we are going to index. But of course, they provide the full text using different formats, and mainly the formats that we receive that we need to process with our pipelines are PDFs, which mainly come from archive, XML files, which come from the majority of the publishers, and we have also many OCR files, which are basically the text extracted by ADS from all articles. So something I want to remind everybody here is actually in ADS, every time that we have a record that comes from archive and a record that comes from a publisher, we are going to merge both of them. So usually the story goes like this. First, the researcher is going to publish something in archive, so we are going to receive this PDF from archive. We're going to create a record in ADS. We're going to extract the content from the PDF, and this is going to be already there in the search engine so that any user can find it. But later on, maybe some weeks afterwards, some months afterwards, when the final version of the paper is published, the publisher is going to say, hey, here it's the final version of the paper, here is all the metadata, and here you have also the full text. So at this point, our system is going to automatically detect, oh, okay, so we have here the archive one, the publisher one, these two are the same, we're going to merge them. So we are merging these two records into a single one, so that all the citations, all the statistics are going to be together in that single record. This also means that if for instance, in some case, we have full text that is coming from archive, because we can extract the text from the PDF, but the publisher does not provide the full text for us, the system is intelligent enough to say, okay, so I want to merge these two records, I don't have full text from this side, at least I'm going to use this full text. So in the merged record, we're going to still have full text coming from archive. So, yes?
So you say you merge them. Are they both still there so that if I don't have access to the journal, I can still click on archive and get the archive version?
Yes. So they are both merged. We keep all the links to the original one, I mean the publisher one and the archive one. So all the information is there. You don't lose anything. And you can access perfect. So, given this procedure, we had the idea of saying, oh, we could actually do something, try something cool here. We have full text that comes from publisher, full text that comes from archive. There tend to be some differences between these two, but there should not be like dramatic differences. What happens if we actually just take these two texts from each article that has been matched, and we compare the two texts? And we did that, and this is what we got. Here what we see is the similarity in the x-axis. Basically here what this means is 1 is that the two documents are identical, and 0 is they are completely different. And we have the frequency, so how many of articles fall in each of these bins. And we tried this using different strategies. One of them was using the back-of-word similarity. Here, basically, we are just counting how frequent certain words are in each of these documents, and we are computing the similarity based only on that. So as you can see, for this, we get something that more or less we expected. We expect that all the articles in archive and the articles from the publishers are going to be very, very similar. But then when we tried other different approaches, like the n-grams using three or 7 words, this what means is instead of considering just single words, we're going to take 3 words or 7 words together, and we are going to count for the frequency of these 7 or 3 words together. So we are taking into consideration more context than just one single word. When we do that, suddenly the similarity between the documents starts to go down, and we were like, this doesn't look right. There is something wrong here, or we are doing something wrong, or I don't know, something is happening. So that was a nice first attempt to do this evaluation, because it forces us to go and check the full text and compare what's going on. And this helped us to understand what kind of challenges or difficulties exist with extraction of full text. And these challenges are also relevant for our users to know. So for instance, some of the things that we do is when we receive a PDF from archive. Sorry, yes.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I was wondering because, when you submit something to the archive and then later it's published, sometimes people don't actually update the archive version to reflect the revisions in the published version. And sometimes that's even on purpose, because there were things I liked in the original version that I'd like people to have access to. For example, the publisher may say, that figure 3 may not be necessary, but for you like figure 3,
Yes,
and you really want it to be there in some version. So, you may select as an author to have these 2 versions be different and be happy with that. Is that okay in terms of, the way that ADS would like to proceed, or should authors be thinking in a different way?
No, I think it's completely fine to have this kind of take this kind of decision. So that would be fine. And as I was saying before, it's not that we expect these 2 full text to be exactly the same. We understand there are small corrections like language correction, but there may be things like what you have exactly said, and it's fine. That's perfectly fine.
So people would be able to get the full text of either one.
The only thing is that when we merge these 2 records, if we have full text coming from both the publisher and archive, we're going to favor always the publisher. So if you try to search for something that appears in your archive version but does not appear in the published version, you're not going to find it.
So would that suggest that maybe the authors should have a different title or something for the archive? If they want the archive version to stand as a separate paper, what would they have to do? What distinction would they have to make so that you don't lose it under the merging? In other words, it's not
You don't lose
merged
it anyway.
essentially.
It's archived.
But you won't find it in a full text search.
You won't find the things that aren't in it in the full text search. I'll throw it in.
But you'd like it.
you are making it into a different article, you should make it different.
So you should figure a different
Or anything, you know.
I should,
So far as I know, nobody.
I should maybe clarify something. And it's when we say we have the full text, we have agreement with all these publishers where we are not going to distribute the full text. The full text is only used for searching purposes. So it's not, what I'm saying is not like the user, when it reaches the record, the abstract, the user has always the possibility to click the link and fetch the full text from archive or from the publisher. So that content is there, as we said before, that there is no problem with that. It's just for a matter of search. Yes, Steve?
And if we have merged your two records and you think that you're not fine with that feature, you can contact our curation staff and they can break that into two existing things.
So if you had a special case.
Although in that case, I would, as astronomer, I would worry that then my citations get split, because maybe people will cite archive and maybe others will cite other, and yeah, you know, the statistics get messed up.
Why not use the LaTeX uploads from archive?
That's a good question, and something that we are considering for the future. But so far we are using just the PDF. It's just, it gets tricky when you want to use LaTeX because you know, you have to account for lines that are commented, things that in the end do not appear in the final version. So you have to be more careful. While if you have the PDF, you know that's the real thing that the author wanted to publish or to share with the rest of the world. But yeah, it's a good idea. Anything else? Okay. So back to the problems that we found. So for articles that we've received the PDF, we use a tool that is called PDF to text to extract the text from those PDF. So to create plain text files from the PDF. And some of the things that happen is, for instance, when you have a formula like this one, and you try to extract it with the PDF to text, you get something like this, which is, of course, not at all similar to what the formula is saying. Or when you have, for instance, which is something very common, you have papers with two columns, and maybe one of the columns is particularly complex because there is an index there. When the tool tries to extract things from here, it gets this kind of weird text that actually, if you look into the details, you will see that there is a whole bunch, a whole part that is missing in that text, and also it's like weirdly formatted. So you see there are difficulties extracting text from PDFs. Another issue, when you have tables, something again that is very common, you try to extract text from this, and we get text like this, which looks like quite weird. So as you can imagine, we were trying to compare full text from archive with full text from the publisher, but the text that we are obtaining from the PDFs can contain a lot of garbage sometimes that is going to screw up the similarity comparison. But this is not all of it, because then if we go to the site of the publisher, when we say, okay, the publisher is giving us like XML files, these are going to be well-formatted files, perfectly fine without any issues, that would be in an ideal world, but then the reality is something like this. When I say XML, for those that do not know, basically XML is a language that allows you to use tags like the ones that we have on the screen to delimit paragraphs or parts of the document, like saying this is the title, here are the authors, and so on. So in this particular example, something that stands out is here we have two words, target and parameters, that somehow the publisher provided together without any space. So basically this is wrong, and actually when we go and look the original PDF of the publisher, this is correctly printed with a space in between these two words. So yeah, we are extracting again things from an XML that we think is perfect, but it is not. And not only this, because some publishers, also I should say, that not all publishers use exactly the same tags and the same format. So all of them, or most of them, they provide XML, but this doesn't mean that they all are going to use the same tags here. And not only this, because some of them, apart from providing maybe different tags, they're going to include in the text things that, oops, sorry. They're going to include in the text things like this. So you have just normal text, and suddenly you have an ampersand, n dash, semicolon, or ampersand, thin SP, which for the software that the publisher is using, it makes sense. The software probably is interpreting this thin SP as a thin space, but a priori we don't know. We don't have this information. So when we extract the full text, we may be extracting also these small things together, like as if it is just normal text, which will impact what the user searches for. So again, we had problems extracting from the PDF, but we also have problems extracting from XML. So that explains why, when we try to compare similarities between these two, when we thought that they were going to be quite similar, actually, in reality, they become quite different. And this is actually very good to have done this investigation, because of course we're going to keep working on this to try to clean things like this, keep identifying this kind of problem to provide the best data possible. So, given all this, maybe we should say some disclaimers before we start playing with full text in the new ideas. So the first thing is that we should not assume that we have full text for every single article in our database. We have for many of them, we have for more than 5 million out of 13 million, so that's a very, very good coverage, but it's not 100% of them. The other thing is that we cannot assume that if we search a literal string, like we have had cases, users that contacted us saying, look, I have this article, I selected one sentence of the article and I search in ADS, in the new ADS, for exactly this string, and my article does not come out from this search. How is this possible? If you say that you are indexing full text, this should appear, right? But it's because of all these small mistakes. Sometimes some long sentence may not be exactly as you are seeing it in the PDF. So that's something to keep in mind. And finally, as we've seen, it's not good for formulas, chemistry, molecules, and tables in general. Okay, so let's see what can we use this full text in ADS. So the first thing to know is in the new ADS we have certain fields that we can use to search. Of course, we have the title, we have the abstract, but now also we have the body of the articles, the acknowledgement. That's also something very interesting that we have for those publishers that provide XML, where they identify, okay, here there are the acknowledgement, we have separated them, and we have an individual field for them. And finally, we have this field that is called full, that basically is a combination of all of the others. It's searching the full article. And for any of these fields, there is something to keep also in mind. And you can use these fields using quotes, like this, or using parentheses. And the first intuition seems like, oh, this is the same, it's equivalent, but actually it is not. It's important to notice that when we use quotes like this, we are actually searching for this string, literally this string in this exact order. But when we are using parentheses, what we are saying is, okay, show me all the papers that contain all these words, but they can be placed in different places in the document. They do not have to be exactly one after the other. Okay, so let's have a look at some examples. So, let me clean this. So, something that we are going to try right now is we are going to search for papers that mention a particular software. For instance, a software that is called iSpec, which is just a spectroscopic tool to analyze stellar spectra.
Hey Sergi, can you zoom your screen in a little bit?
If I can.
Can you make your screen a little bigger?
Bigger, yes. So if I search for this, by the way, I don't know if you've noticed, but by default I have collection astronomy. So this is a filter that I have applied by default, just so that you know if you go to accounts, customize settings, in application, you can actually say, by default, I just want to search in astronomy or in physics or in general or the three of them. It's something that you can change here. So in my case, I have always on astronomy, and that's why every time I search something, it's going to appear astronomy here. So what I'm doing right now is searching for articles from this collection that contain the word iSpec in the content of the article. And we could compare this. We see that it's like 173, and we could compare this to actually how many citations has the article that talks about iSpec. So it's the article that people are supposed to cite. And you can see we have less citations than what we found before. So this is a way also of exploring the database, trying to search for papers that maybe do not cite the paper of a software that you are interested in, but they mention it in the full text, or maybe just ADS has not detected this citation, and you can always contact ADS and say, hey, there is some paper that is citing me here, and you can account it as a citation. And something actually quite nice that you can do, like for instance, right now we had a list before that was longer than this one, and you could ask yourself, how can I figure out what is the difference between one and the other? That would be nice to have in a very automatic way. So something that we can do is say, okay, I want to search again for all the articles that contain the word iSpec, and I want to subtract all the articles that actually are citations to this bitcode, that is the article that I mentioned just before. And by doing this, we get the difference. So now these 92 articles are articles that contain the word iSpec but do not cite the iSpec paper. And now we can actually maybe even explore, try to understand more what's going on, because sometimes you have words like, for instance, iSpec that may be used in different contexts or refers to different things, not what you are thinking about. And something that you can do is like click this show highlights. And when we click this show highlights, it's going to load the highlights for each of these abstracts and just show a small fragment of the full text. As I said before, we do not distribute the full text because of our agreement with the publisher, but we can still show like a small fraction where the word appears. And now we can inspect these highlights and say, okay, actually this one, for instance, seems to be a legitimate article that is actually talking about iSpec, the iSpec that I recognize. And now I can maybe contact ADS and say, hey, this article seems to be talking about this, and maybe they are citing it, but ADS did not detect the citation, and so on. Okay. What else can we do with full text? The same that I've just explained for software mentions. We can also search for mentions of instruments, like it could be harps. So harps, again, you see we have more than 3,000 results. So more than 3,000 articles that contains the word harps. And again, if we compare it to the reference article, where people, the one that people should be citing every time that they want to use something from harps or refer to harps, it is way a smaller number. So again, it's another way of exploring who is using what instrument, and it's not citing citing it properly. And as you can imagine, this is very important for many researchers, because if you have a project and you want to demonstrate that what you've done is useful to the community, it's not only presentation that you have, and maybe people that are mentioning your project, but they are not citing correctly your project. So that is going to be very useful for grant proposals or evaluations and so on. Then something quite cool that I like from this full text thing is that apart from what we've seen, we can do something like this. I'm going to search because this sometimes takes a little bit of time. So here what I'm doing is actually searching for high accuracy radial velocity planet searcher, which actually corresponds to HARVP, sorry, not the V, PS, so HARPS. This is exactly the description, the definition of the acronym HARPS. And something cool here is that ADS is going to automatically see that this corresponds to HARPS, to the word HARPS, to the acronym HARPS, and it's going to search for you in an automatic way this string, like it appears here, but it's also going to search for HARPS, and the other way around. If I search for HARPS, it's going to also search for the full string. So that's kind of a very nice feature of full text. Then another thing that is really interesting, as I mentioned very briefly before, apart from this full field, we have also the ACK field, which corresponds to acknowledgements. And something that we can do now is like, okay, how many people have acknowledged, for instance, this grant? And now you have a list of papers that in their acknowledgements, they thank this grant for the support. Or you could search, of course, you can search for yourself, you can search for a project, like ADS. And you can see how many people are thanking ADS, which is quite nice. And if I show the highlights for this set of records, we're going to see again that this ADS, so Astrophysics Data System, is also being converted to the acronym as we said before. So this happens not only in full, it also happens with the ACK field. Another thing interesting to do with ACK is combine it with affiliations, for instance. And here is like, okay, I want to see all the papers that are being published thanks to NASA, where NASA has some participation. And a way of doing that would be like, okay, let's search in acknowledgement where NASA appears, and also we're going to combine this with affiliations, because of course scientists that work for NASA, and in their affiliation appears the word NASA. We are also interested in that. So we could combine these fields with other, sorry. This is just because I'm copy pasting from Keynote, and it doesn't like certain characters. I have to type it again. This is, we cannot perceive it, but certain software like Keynotes or Pages or Word can change some of these quotes, and then the searcher is going to freak out and say, what is this? I don't recognize that character. So yeah, as I was saying, here we have all the resource where in these papers NASA is acknowledged, or there is some author that is paid by NASA. And finally, the last example that I want to show you is in ADS we can do searches like this. What I'm doing is object colon M67. M67 is an open cluster, and basically here what ADS is doing is, thanks to SIMBAD, we can translate this M67 to an ID, and then thanks again to SIMBAD, we can get back all the papers that talk about this object. But this works fantastically well for stars. We have also net for galaxies, But there are other things that for which we do not have a service. And for instance, if we want to search for something like Mars regions, like this map of Mars, like we could just use full text. We don't have a service that is going to translate this for us, but we can search for the existence of certain words in the text. So I could search for this. And we will get back all the results, all the studies that have been done related to Mars and that mention that region in Mars. So yeah, this is it. Thank you very much. Now, if there are more questions, yes.
It looked like it was not case sensitive.
It isn't. The only thing to have into account is if we write everything in capital letters, it's going to be interpreted as, oh, maybe this is an acronym. So if you write just a single word or everything in capital letters, it's going to try to see if this is an acronym. But if not, the rest it's
Can you make it? Can you insist that it be capital? Can you insist that it be case sensitive?
Roman?
Everything is lowercase inside the index. And if you type in something which is capitalized, we will search both for the acronym version and non-acronym, but we do not really store information about the
Just a thought regarding this color cross matching in Sinbad. I mean, the Gaia catalog is very likely to find observational astronomy, at least for stars, for the foreseeable future. So it might be worth thinking about how to evolve Gaia. I suspect that'll be increasingly used moving forward.
Yeah, and that's a huge challenge because of course Gaia is going to detect billions of objects and
But that'll be the definitive measurement for every individual star.
yeah. But I'm sure that Sinbad in France, they are working already with the Gaia people, trying to figure out how to deal with this. And that's the nice thing of this collaboration. We collaborate very closely with Sinbad and the CDS in general. So whatever improvement that they may do to their service related to Gaia or some other mission, we are going to receive the improvement in a direct way. So, yeah. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much.